Now, we're going to go to a narrative that we've treated with a great deal of detail over the years and months, and it's war and how it's building.
Yes, indeed. So on Monday, NATO announced that on Saturday at the weekend, a French Rafale fighter jet was scrambled, one of three deployed to Poland in response to, quote, another potential threat from Russian drones. The response, they say, was fast and the alert was over quickly. So that was according to Supreme Allied Commander Europe. Now, four German Eurofighters apparently stand ready to respond at an airbase in the northeast of Poland, and three helicopters from the Czech Republic arrived in Poland over the weekend, and that's according to this NATO release. But we, of course, heard in the last few days that the UK, Denmark, Spain, Sweden, and Italy have all said they'll provide capabilities for the NATO operation in Poland as well. The Starmer regime said that, quote, the Typhoons will operate out of RAF Coningsby in Lincolnshire and are expected to start flying missions over Poland in the coming days. They'll be supported by RAF Voyager air-to-air refueling aircraft from RAF Bryce Norton. The commitment follows a meeting of the North Atlantic Council on Wednesday, the 10th of September, where the UK and allies discussed the situation following Poland's request for consultations under Article 4 of the Washington Treaty. Allies expressed full solidarity with Poland. So this is apparently, they go on to say, in fact, this new era of threat exemplified by Russia's intensifying airspace violations requires a new era of defense. And this government is delivering the largest sustained increase in defense spending since the end of the Cold War. The rhetoric is nonsense, but at the point here is that they continue to try to build this narrative of Russian attacks on NATO countries with a view, well, Article 4 already invoked, but with a view to invoking Article 5. So where does that take us? Well, in the meantime, the UK Foreign Office summoned the Russian ambassador to the UK, Andrei Klein, yesterday to complain about alleged Russian drones violating Polish airspace. And TASS here is reporting that, quotes, on September the 15th, the ambassador was invited to the Foreign Office where a formal protest was lodged against him regarding the presence of drones in Polish airspace. The British were asked if they had any evidence that the drones had been launched by the Russian military. They did not provide any. We also asked them to clarify the motives for sending drones towards Poland. Obviously, Russia would not have been interested in this. On the contrary, the Kiev leadership has many reasons and opportunities to carry out such a false flag operation. It's not difficult to list them. No counter arguments have been presented to us. And the embassy, Klein went on to say, we reiterate that Russia has no interest in escalating tensions in relations with Poland or NATO. On the contrary, Kiev and its sponsors, who've repeatedly carried out provocations for this purpose, are interested in further inflating militaristic anti-Russian hysteria. Therefore, it's clear who's at fault. Well, the narrative for Article 5 continues to build. Reuters here claims that the Romanian Defense Ministry has said that it scrambled an F-16 to chase a Russian drone that it claimed entered Romanian airspace from Ukraine. The defense minister said the F-16 pilots came close to taking down the drone as it was flying very low before it left national airspace towards Ukraine. It flew back towards Ukraine. Charles, I don't know what to say about that. Did it come from Russia? Therefore, it's impossible to say. The problem is, of course, that the whole Russian drones in Poland fakery continues to fall apart. With the news that the house that was damaged was actually damaged by a Polish missile fired from an F-16. And actually, according to Polish sources, not mentioned in this article, but those sources saying that the house had already been damaged by a storm. But let's not let any of that get in the way of the truth that the government wants us to believe. Now, things are not going so well for NATO here in Europe. Let's see what we've got. Sorry, things may not be going so well here for NATO in Europe, but they can at least point to their continuing expansion in the Pacific as the encirclement of Russia and the increasing pressure on China continues. So here's Defense Times reporting that the US Army put on a display of its Typhoon mid-range missile system in Japan a couple of days ago. Typhoon was featured during the annual bilateral exercise Resolute Dragon, which started last week. And that includes more than 19,000 US and Japanese troops participating in an exercise on maritime defense and littoral protection, which is held across Japan. And that's according to the US Department of Defense, cited by Defense News here. At the same time, Japan's Air Force is sending a contingent of 4 F-15J fighters and support aircraft on a tour of the US and Europe, quotes, to strengthen cooperation with NATO amid threats from Russia, China, and North Korea. And that's according to Newsweek on screen at the moment. Japan views the security of the Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific as indivisible, citing Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, China's attempts to change the status quo by force in disputed Asian waters, and North Korea's development of nuclear missiles. The deployment of the Japanese Air Force, Newsweek reports, its first mission in Europe and Canada follows the conclusion of a British aircraft carrier's operations in Northeast Asia. So the war machine continues to build. But just to finish this off, in response to reports of a US Navy vessel boarding and detaining a Venezuelan fishing boat, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs denounced the risk of conflict and the raising of the risk in conflict. And they said recently, in the name of combating drug trafficking, the US has deployed forces to the waters of the Caribbean Sea off Venezuela and claimed to have sunk a Venezuelan vessel, shot dead soldiers, and intercepted and detained a Venezuelan fishing boat, resulting in continued tensions in the region. The US's moves threaten regional peace and security, severely infringe upon other countries' sovereignty, security, and lawful rights and interests, and seriously violate international law. And that was according to the Chinese Foreign Ministry. I just wanted very briefly, Vanessa, just to get a comment from you on this, because you are aware of what's going on with Venezuela. So if you could comment on that, and also the Chinese statement here.
Well, I think, historically, the war on drugs has never been anything more than the US basically benefiting from the drug cartels, but then weaponizing them against the target countries. We've seen it in Venezuela, and of course, we saw it in Syria with President Assad being called the head of the narco state with the Captagon claims. Of course, Captagon running is still continuing since the former government fell, which suggests that it had nothing to do with President Assad, but more to do with the Western terrorist proxies.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Now let's move on then back to sort of Palestinian-related issues.
Yeah, indeed. With Vanessa, I mean, you obviously, your earlier segment really describing how little is being done by the political class who continue to sit on their hands. But now you're going to tell us a bit more about people who are, in fact, getting out and doing something.